98 miles south of Whitehall lies another small New York town that has a significant role in Bigfoot's story on the East Coast. I first became aware of the village of Kinderhook while making The Beast of Whitehall. Paul Bartholomew was eager for me to learn about the infamous rash of strange creature reports that took place in the early 1980s, and I was so fascinated by the stories that I ended up including a brief news segment that a TV news crew from Albany had done on the Kinderhook creature in our film. We journeyed out of the Adirondack area to visit Western Massachusetts and to learn more about Bigfoot in the Northeast. When we discovered that Kinderhook was right along our travel route, we made a beeline for this tiny hamlet in the Hudson Valley. Upon arrival, we met up with Bruce Hallenbeck, a key player in the creature case, as well as one of the co-authors of Monsters of the North Woods. Can you talk about the Kinderhook creature sightings and Bruce and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. If in some of these regions, it's not what you would expect. Albany, New York, the capital of New York, if you go just 10 miles south, you will run into Kinderhook, New York. They have a creature down there. The leading expert on the Kinderhook creature is Bruce G. Hallenbeck. And Bruce Hallenbeck, several members of his family have had close encounters with a creature and multiple creatures down in that region.
And a lot of the Kinderhook creature sightings took place in or around 1980, which is not all that far removed from the A-Bear incident of 1976. This was a time in history where Bigfoot sightings were happening all over the country, and there was a general sense that it's all right to talk about these things.
The creature or creatures in the Kinderhook area.
It's very elusive, whatever it is.
In fact, Hallenbeck says this thing is so elusive that he'll sometimes see tracks and then they suddenly stop as if the creature had vanished into thin air.
Can you walk us through the Kinderhook creature events?
The Kinderhook creature story really is, in a way, the story of my grandmother. But it started with another family member of mine, my cousin Barry, who was trapping down in the swampland behind my parents' house. One day he came running up to the house and I was here, and his face was as white as a sheet, and he said he had seen 3 creatures cross the creek down there that were tall, bipedal, and had reddish brown hair, and they were making clacking and grunting sounds. Much later that year, my grandmother noticed that something was taking her trash bags from the garbage can on the porch, taking the bags down to the middle of the yard, untying them like a person would do, and rifling through to apparently look for food. So it must have had fingers, right? My grandmother also found out that her neighbor, a woman named Mrs. Walters, was having the same experiences, and she found her trash bag up in a tree one day. And then one morning my grandmother got up early, around 5 o'clock, and it was just getting light, and she looked out the kitchen window and saw something lying on the ground, all curled up, she said, like in a fetal position.
A creature curled up in the fetal position on her lawn, and she watched for a minute thinking it was a bear that was going to get up and walk, lumber away. Whatever it was got up, stood on 2 legs, and walked away. And they wrote to the Times-Union back then, a columnist named Barney Fowler, and he dubbed it the Kinderhook creature.
Close encounter with a creature.
Oh, he was big, tall, and he was standing on his 2 feet just like a person, and covered with black hair.
So he published a letter, and as a result of that, scores of other people wrote in saying that they had had similar experiences. They'd either seen something or they'd heard something they couldn't explain, and they were all in the same general area here in Columbia County. It got to the point where he was getting deluged with so many letters, he finally had to say, okay, that's enough. We have to stop now. We have to go on to other topics. Finally, in September 24th, 1980, my Aunt Barbara was bringing my grandmother home from her house. As soon as my grandmother got out of the car, she heard this noise from around the side of the house that she described as sounding like a person in mortal agony. My Aunt Barbara heard it, and she was so terrified that she panicked, and she locked all the doors before my grandmother could get back in the car. What eventually happened was my grandmother came into the house, and my Aunt Barbara went to get my cousin Barry, who had a shotgun. My grandmother stayed in the house holding a hammer in her hand, sitting by the window, ready for anything, I guess, because she was a tough lady. My Aunt Barbara came back with her son Barry, and Barry got up on the porch with a shotgun, and he heard the rustling of leaves, and he heard the thing moving near the trees. And so he fired the shotgun up into the air, and everything went silent. Then he fired it again, and he said this time flame came out of the barrel of the gun, and the creature screamed and ran away. And that was the end of it. They didn't hear anything more that night. So there were a lot of sightings and a lot of vocalizations going on through the 80s, up into late 1988, actually, when my mother tape recorded a strange creature making all kinds of bizarre noises across the road from their house.
Can you start by telling me your name and your connection to the story, the Kinderhook Creature story?
I'm Susan Hallenbeck, and I live here. My mother and I taped the noises and heard noises for quite a while over that one summer. I think it was about 82 and again in 88. 82 was a variety of strange noises, like sometimes it would sound like a pig squealing, and other times it would sound like a giant bird, like a pterodactyl or something, and sometimes it would sound almost like a monkey. There was also, I think it was when we made the tape, if I'm not mistaken, that my father went over across the road with a shotgun trying to see if he could see anything, and he said he saw something with red eyes. Something that he saw with red eyes, and he said there aren't really any animals native to this area that have red eyes. So that was part of it.
Still plays.
It's still, oh, you have the original one? Is that in there? Oh, okay, even better then.
That's exciting.
All right. I did. Well, I was trying to turn it up. Anything else?
We were almost wondering if it was some kind of a bird thing.
Yeah, it would make weird bird noises. I was telling him about that.
When we shined the light on it, and then a couple of seconds later, it was down at the other end of the field where that driveway was.
Yeah, it moved fast, whatever it was, or there were two of them.
Fast, whatever.
But he said he saw something with red eyes.
Red eyes, that's all he saw.
The sightings continued. There were some very interesting experiences that people had who were neighbors of ours. There was a fellow up the road named Philip Weingard who said that he saw it in a swamp. You know, the typical description, and he said it was making a horrible sound. There was an excellent sighting by a fellow named Mike Mabb who was fishing at a nearby dam one day, and he saw across the creek this creature come out of the woods. And this was in broad daylight, mind you. This was in the afternoon. He said it had reddish brown hair, very big dark eyes. He even said that he could see its fingernails were black. And finally it turned and went back into the woods, and that was the end of it.
So what you have in the Kinderhook location is that green pathway going from the Adirondacks down around the Albany area and along the Hudson River then. You can also extend that eastward. And if you go about 50 miles east, then again, you're running into Greylock Mountain, you're running into the Savoy State Forest in western Massachusetts. While it wouldn't seem immediately evident that this would be a place for strange creature locations, there seems to be a sensible way that this is linked to other areas of New York.